Hello and welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today I am here with Andrew Obadiaru. I'm sorry, I lost it right at the last second. Go ahead, Obadiaru. Did I get it right?
Excellent. You got it
Okay.
right.
I'm terrible. I do apologize, but today we're here with him. He is the CISO. Andrew is the CISO of Cobalt. And so we're going to dig into a little bit of what he sees or his views on the human element are. I'd love just to sort of open it up and ask you, do you have any overarching sort of opinions about security awareness or phishing or anything like that?
Sure. Josh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think, security awareness, I think, is important, right? For any organization, security awareness is a key component of any security stack because that's how you keep your folks. Your biggest defense is really your employees, your human elements. If they get it wrong, one screw up could create problems for your organization. So for us, we invest heavily in security awareness. It's important that our users understand what is expected of them from a policy standpoint, from an acceptable use policy standpoint. And when it comes to phishing, it's the same thing. There's a lot of different things you have to worry about now with the introduction of AI. Phishing has become a lot more sophisticated. So the more you're able to educate your user community about that, you're able to stay a little bit ahead of what cyber criminals are trying to do out there. So I think I place a lot of credence on phishing, on security awareness, because it's really a key component of our security stack and our security strategy.
That's wonderful and music to my ears. So I'd love to dig into that. And one of the places I'd like to start is around uh, phishing simulations. And I want to ask the question, have you ever had anyone get upset because of a phishing simulation? And then, if the answer is yes, could you tell us about it and maybe what lessons you learned and maybe any changes you made as a result?
Yeah, I mean, if looking back at my career, I don't think I've ever had a situation where anyone has specifically raised objections to phishing simulation. I mean, in the past, we've had concerns about the frequency of it, but to not to completely say, "Hey, I don't want to participate in this." It's just not an option that we give to our employees because of the potential implications of phishing going through the process. So, if you are not aware, if we don't conduct simulation, then we can one evaluate the sophisticated nature of our employees, how well they truly understand out there. How do we bring to the awareness some of the sophisticated nature of these new phishing emails that you have out there? So I think we can underscore the importance of phishing simulation. It allows us to evaluate the levels of skills of our employees, how well they're able to make those determinations, because you're really not there. It's really between them and their computer. So if they're not adequately trained or even informed on what they should be looking for, then you run a big risk of being falling prey to some of these very sophisticated phishing simulations out there. So I think for me, it's not an option for us. I haven't met an employee yet that's going to tell us, well, we don't want to do phishing simulations. It's just not an option. The importance are there. We've emphasized why this is important for us as an organization, and I think everyone has been very cooperative and understanding of that. So, in all of the organizations that I've worked, phishing simulation has been a key component of our security strategy or security awareness program. So no one has really raised concern around, oh, well, we don't want to have phishing simulation. Like I said, the frequency could be troubling for people. You don't want to overdo it, and people start to take it for granted. So what we've tried to do is to kind of peg it at quarterly. Quarterly gives them the ability to understand, and we try to make it a little bit more fun for them as well. So it's not just that they understand, and we try to simulate something that is so real and something that they can easily relate with, right? For me, I've never had an employee raise a concern.
I, I think it's also part of your methodology, your goal, how you go about it. If the goal is nothing more than to trick the user, I think that's when you're going to have upset users. But when the goal is to educate and you can properly communicate, I find that you don't get a lot of those. But it really depends on methodology, and that's the reason that I ask. Very interesting. And I feel like maybe a great follow up question then to that is, when you run phishing simulations, what would you rank as your top three goals?
Well, we're looking for one, the percentage of folks that are clicking, right? Who is clicking on this, right? Who is sharing credentials online? Who is raising concerns about what they suspect, right? Reporting, suspicious email. Uh, and luckily for us, our number has been very low. We're actually below the average organizationally. So I think that's been good. But, off the back, that's what I'll be looking at. If we get an increase or increased percentages of folks that are clicking, that's going to be concerning for me, right? That means they haven't been either paying attention to our training, or our training is not sufficient enough to give them the information they need to be able to act in those moments. So for us, those are the key metrics we'll look at. Who's clicking, what percentage of folks are actually clicking, who's reporting is a suspicious email, and who's going as far as sharing credentials via this simulation. So those will be the three big ones that I'll be focused in on. And like I said, luckily for us, those numbers have been very low, actually below the average industry standards.
So tell me this: what types of sophisticated attacks are you seeing most frequently? I know from what I'm seeing, it very much changes based on industry. I would imagine you see not only your own, but potentially some of your clients as well. What types of attacks are you seeing most frequently right now?
From a phishing
Yeah.
standpoint,
Well,
well,
any social engineering or human in general. I mean, it could be smishing, phishing, vishing, you name it.
yeah, it's mostly phishing, right? Because that's still the easiest way to get information out of users, right? So it becomes how sophisticated that phishing is, right? How believable it is. So I've seen a lot of that. Not luckily for us, there was a time we were getting that. They would deploy different methods, even going as far as, hey, there's a gift card from this, or when it's the holiday season, we get the UPS, the FedEx type thing where you're expecting a delivery, or somebody may have sent a picture from your Facebook and they say, hey, we were attending your daughter's game yesterday, blah, blah, blah. So there are different ways that we go on. But now with the introduction of AI, obviously it's a lot more believable now. What we used to use as checkpoints are no longer true, because we used to look at spelling errors and, just to think how you construct that simulation, right? How is the phishing written? What logo? There's logo in there. Does the logo look real, right? What images are using? Things like that. But now AI is helping to take care of some of those concerns for them, which is to their own advantage. That means for us, we have to exercise more due diligence now, pay more close attention. The phishing simulation we put together has to be extremely believable, has to be, AI driven as well. To the extent that we can leverage AI in driving those simulations, we do that as well. So the goal is to be one step or two ahead of them, right? Anticipate what they could do and then leverage that.
So let me ask you this. Um, I know I've seen a lot of phishing attacks targeting my finance team, targeting my IT team, targeting my executive leadership, my HR teams. Are you seeing any of that as well?
Absolutely. The executive team remains a big target. Our finance team remains a big target. We've had a few instances where folks try to redirect emails. Organizations share some of that information time to time. So the areas you've mentioned, these are the key areas of because really at the end of the day, and there's a financial benefit to these individuals, right? So they're looking for where to get the biggest bang. And so if you're able to tap into a CEO's email, for example, or even a CEO's computer, that's a wealth of knowledge of information that you can certainly leverage. And same thing for our financial teams as well, our financial department. So those are the areas we work closely with those individuals more to just really say, if anything comes across suspicious, send that to to us. So we have different technologies that we deployed in addition to the simulation exercise that allows them to channel some of this suspicious email to us into a different domain where we can evaluate it and determine whether it is a legitimate email or not. But those groups you mentioned remain a big target for most of these cyber criminals. You know, they want to be able to tap into your executive team or your finance team or the tech IT team or even the people team as well.
So, are you doing any role-based phishing or role-based training to really adapt to that changing and more targeted threat?
Well, we do a little bit, right? We're not really segregating the training. So what we try to do is to kind of, because if it's true for them, it's true for everybody else, right? So if they are not successful in phishing an executive, they may be successful in phishing a regular employee. So to us, the risk is still the same. I don't want my environment to be compromised, right? Whether it's coming through an executive or even coming through a regular employee. So we don't segregate in that way, but we tend to, whatever we've learned from the process, we incorporate it into the training, into the simulation, and we roll it out across the organization. So, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So I have a couple of other questions. So it is Security Awareness Month. Are you doing anything special this month as a result?
Well, we're still in the middle of our awareness. We typically do it every October. So we're doing that. We're also baking in a
Is
reward.
that like an annual training that you do?
Annual training is from the 1st of October to the end of October for every user. And if we have new folks coming to the organization within that period, in addition to the annual training, we also deploy new user training as well. So for this period, what we've done is to kind of build some kind of reward structure into the process to say, hey, if you complete this within a record time, you get this. If you're able to answer all the questions right, and then if you follow some of us, acceptable use policy, we encourage folks to do all of that, and there's some level of some token of a gift that we could give out to those that really follow those policies very well.
Okay. So I think you mentioned earlier a little bit about making it entertaining. Did I hear that? Um,
So,
are
yeah,
you doing
did I
anything around that?
like get me feel type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a little bit of that. And the reason we do that, for those folks that are not technically savvy, right, that find some of this stuff boring, so we find a way to make it a little bit more engaging for them by deploying some kind of game into the process. So we work with a third party that help us build out some of this training. So they incorporate some games in there to kind of, make it a little bit more entertaining and engaging for them. So they're not just trying to click, click, click and get through the process. So we incorporated gaming into some of the questions and answer process as well. So we find that to be beneficial to the employees. With the pace of time they take to finish your training, it's not a little bit more as against if you're doing it without any kind of games into it, they just want to rush through it and get it over with. But when you incorporate some kind of gaming or gamified into the process, they're a little bit more interested, especially the game. It's interesting enough for them.
So I'm curious just to get your opinions. AI is it's a wonderful thing. It's very cool. I know AI has been around since 1958, I think it was, or something like that, right? But in the past 2 years, to everyone's credit, and the fact that it's so hype's credit, uh, it's changed, and technology is all of a sudden exploding once again. But with all of that excitement and all of the opportunity that comes with it, there's risk, and there's new things that we need to be training our people about. So, from an awareness perspective, what are the top things that you believe we need to be training users about as it pertains to AI?
That's a very good question. I mean, AI comes with a lot of benefit and advantages. There's also risk baked into it, which may be easily, I may be easily aware of it, and the ordinary end user may not be what those risks are. To them, they're just imputing data and trying to get output out of it. So what we've done is to kind of let them know, be cognizant of the data you share in this process. because we lose control of that data once you put it in. It's no longer within our purview. So that means on the back end of that, whoever is receiving that data, whoever owns the LLM, that means we're not going to have any visibility. So sensitive information, you can't share that via AI. You can't type that into that prompt to seek any particular feedback. So we've also developed, our AI-driven policy to really, educate our users on what some of those risks are and how to kind of move when you're within that space. So there's also the question of, the veracity of the information you get out of AI. How credible is this? How much reliance can you place on this information? So I think those are the kind of things that we're cognizant about and we try to pass on to our end users. So our policy is very well focused more around data protection, on what information you can share, why you mustn't share this kind of information. And from a developer standpoint, we try to discourage them from using it for code development, putting codes into it, and things of that nature. Because if you put your code into there, then somebody could essentially, compromise the back end of that, and then that information is exposed. So those are the kind of areas we're focused in on from a risk perspective. We're not trying to prohibit the use of AI across the organization, but what we're trying to do is to really educate them on the risk and have them, keep that in mind or be cognizant of that risk as they go through these different AI platforms.
Interesting. No, I think those are great points. Just a couple that I might add, and something I'm growing more and more concerned of every day, which is the reason we're so well. We don't just let anyone into the data, but what about those vendors that you rely on that have access to your data? And I think about that more and more, and I think that that's going to be a big part of the AI concern. Is what are other people doing with the data as it pertains to AI? Do I have to worry about somebody else's employee uploading it because, hey, Claude can do stuff? Or what about Claude? I don't know if you saw the new news last week or this week, sorry, where it can now watch everything happening on your screen, interact with it. And so I can give it a prompt, hey, do this. And it knows how to move my mouse around and interact with my environment. Did you see that update?
I didn't see that yet, but I heard about it. I haven't had time to really, review it and fully understand the storyline behind that.
So right now, I think it's not just something where you can install an agent or open it up and just have it run. It's only available through the API, so it's very limited right now in terms of what you can get on it. But still, I watched some videos, very interesting. You've got just generative AI taking off. Runway has one that, which I guess I'm way off subject, but it's still just really cool stuff. Runway has one where I can upload a video and then say, say of myself and say, hey, make me a Lego man. And it'll take that exact video with everything and I'll just be a Lego man. Or I can say, put me in the jungle or put me in a scary graveyard because it's almost Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, there's some really cool stuff. Now I will say, what about what are your thoughts on GitHub's Copilot? If GitHub is compromised, well, our code's compromised anyway, right? So I mean, what are your thoughts on AIs or utilizing coding AIs like that?
Yeah, again, that's an important point, and we've had those discussions with our developers. We do have GitHub Copilot. We have it on limited use at the moment for the obvious reasons you just touched on. So the risk is certainly there, even though we've gotten tons of assurances from GitHub that the system is secure, blah blah blah. So what we
Microsoft has never had any issues.
exactly. So we try to do as part of either our onboarding process or periodic renewal process or periodic touch points with our vendors, would ask those questions, right? So we drive into that process a little bit more. How much of AI you using? How does that work? Can you inform us on the extent of AI? How much of that will interact with our data, et cetera, et cetera? What measures you have in place to control that? So luckily for us, the vast majority of our vendors are not really tapping deep into AI in that kind of way where it's concerning for us. So that's good, but I expect that to change over time. But I think what we've done, we've been very proactive in that regard and to stay on top of it, to work closely with our vendors, to encourage them to be transparent with us on that use. So I think for GitHub, I mean, we certainly we use it. It's a very popular solution as part of the developer team. So we've had those conversations with our developers, and they're all cognizant of that risk. So I think they're very measured in the use as well. So I think, and we overlook that process. We have access to the GitHub Copilot. We review some of the information in there as well. So we look at the different repos. We do our different things with that just to kind of ensure that we're not exposing ourselves too much here, and to just continue to keep our developers informed of that risk. So when you are aware of that risk, you're able to kind of operate differently as against if you just don't have any clue what could potentially go wrong.
So, one thing that I'm realizing more and more is that we as cybersecurity professionals really do have to stay on top of everything that's happening in AI because that impacts our day-to-day job, not just in terms of new tools that may be available to us, but also it's other things like what types of technologies and tools might be available and out there that my users are interested, that my users might be using. Like I'll give you an example. You do pen testing, like software or SaaS pen testing or something like that, right? Did I describe that? Okay.
Yep, correct.
So there is this tool called Interpreter where it allows me to integrate uh, ChatGPT into Kali Linux command line terminal. So I can just tell it what I want it to do. So what if one of your pen testers was doing that to, you know, obfuscate data or whatever, or heck, even just using it to pass data out of the network or something like that? I'm not saying that they would, but like I feel like those are the types of things that, as long as we're aware of them, we can block them. But as soon as we stop becoming aware of them, then that's when they can happen. And so I just think it's almost a reminder for all of us, like this advance in technology, that we have to stay up with advances in technology so we can secure them.
Very, very good point. And we've had those concerns as well. But I think what we've done is we don't use AI as part of our pen testing at this point. So I think all of our testers are also aware of that. We do use Kali.
It's a pretty cool tool. I will say that it's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah. But I think the question is, first of all, do our clients want that, right? Secondly, can you 100% rely on the outcome of that, right? So I think for now, it's still on the evaluation. To what extent do we want to deal with AI or use it? We use AI in limited capacity, mostly for report writing, report generation. But as far as actual pen testing, we don't deploy AI at all. And I think all our testers, we've also communicated that to them. You're not allowed to do that, right? So we have methodologies we build, we have processes we build that they have to follow. So no one at this point is doing that. Thankfully for that.
To be fair, the number one thing that it's really good at is understanding the flags that you can set, or the different variables that you can set for all of your different pen testing tools. So it just really makes a good pen tester better. It's not like it's just going to go hack on its own. We did get it to try on its own, and it was terrible. It was just absolutely terrible. It ran an in-map scan on like the top 25 ports or something like that and called it a day. I think it had the -A flag, so it was running scripts. So at least there was that. But I mean, it wasn't very good. Where I found the value was because I was just playing with it, and one of the things I asked it to do was um, develop polymorphic malware. And initially, it was just terrible. Then I reminded it, hey, you're sitting on Kali Linux. You have a lot of tools to do this. And then it of course asked me, well, here's two that I would suggest. Which one do you want to use? I tell it, and it creates this wonderful prompt that was spot on, and it understood the context of how to structure that very easily. So I didn't have to spend 35 minutes, or probably more like 5, but 5 minutes reading through the man file to figure out how to structure that command if it's not one of the ones that I use every day. So I don't know. I find it really interesting, and I'm very excited to see where things are going in the future.
Yeah, I think over time it's going to get to that. I think most organizations and us, everyone is just a little bit being cautious at this point to see how quickly you want to, make that
Yeah.
jump. You
I
know,
think the only people not being cautious are the bad guys.
precisely. So, and it's helping them a lot, right? So,
Yeah.
for us, we just want to be cautious, and obviously, with time, there's going to be additional use of AI in every aspect of some of these security solutions. I think we just kind of, taking all of the necessary measures to evaluate it and see how well best we can leverage that and to what extent we can use it. So,
And I will say, the real Skynet is just AI phishing us. If we got to be honest, like everyone is worried about the machines attacking, and they are every day in our inbox, in our text messages. But I do. It's funny. We wrote an article about that, and there's so many people worried about Skynet that we get like 50,000 impressions a month on the word Skynet to our website. And I mean, we're so far down the search rankings because we're a cybersecurity site. We're not like sci-fi or whatever, right? Um, and it was only mentioned a few times on that page, so we don't even have good keyword density or anything like that. And so it's just funny to see how much and how deep people are going on the internet researching about Skynet. Um,
no.
so I have a question I like to ask everybody, and I know it's not such a simple question, but if you had to pick one or the other, which would you pick, carrot or stick? Hey, that rhymes.
Hmm. That's a tough one, right? So, I think it's a combination. If I have to pick one, I'll do the carrot, right? Because the way I've looked at it, we all have a stake in this, right? So it's not just a responsibility designated just for security folks, right? The protection of our data and our organization as a whole, everyone should have a shared responsibility in that. So if we have a shared responsibility in protecting the data we traffic in, then it's a common knowledge. I don't have to force you to do anything if you share the goal and the responsibility of doing that. So I think that's my approach to it.
I
Obviously,
I think part of that is creating the culture. Hey, everybody,
precisely,
we're all in this together. Security is everybody's responsibility, and it makes it easy for everybody when we all do our part.
exactly. And I think when you do it that way, you tend to get more buying, more cooperation, more the
It,
culture is better, and everyone tends to operate a little bit better that way, as against taking a heavy hand approach and trying to compel folks to do something just because you said so.
it's that old adage: you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. I'll tell you personally, I am a very big advocate of carrot. When you do have to use stick, I like to start with very gentle sticks, like, "Hey, sorry, but you're considered to be high risk because you keep clicking on things. If you can
Precisely.
stop clicking on things, we can lower your risk." Or just the light stuff, like, hey, you had this mandatory training for compliance we needed you to do, you didn't do it, we're going to have to disable your account until you can complete it. To me, they're still sticks, but they're a lot nicer of sticks than going straight to reporting them to HR, or straight to like having their supervisor contact them, or these different things that tend to, in my opinion, lead to a negative culture.
I completely agree with that, and we do some of that as well. The subtle, push and edge and continuous reminders, things like that. We do that, and because we're also security a company, most of our folks are security conscious, so it,
Yeah,
it, it probably would be different for companies that wedges, right? So it's a totally different mindset, totally different culture. So we do
absolutely.
we poke a little bit, we hedge a little bit, and it hasn't gotten to a point where we have to really raise that stick. So at this point, it's just, as you said, subtle reminders of the importance, because everyone who works here understand the rationale and the thinking behind all.
Yeah, I would hope you wouldn't have to use the stick in a cybersecurity company. But I did have an intern walk into my office one day on his first day of employment asking me about the gift cards that I had asked him to order. So we got a good laugh out of that one.
We got that too. We got so yeah.
Uh, But no, I mean, and that's actually a really good segue. One of the things that I see happen often that I don't see enough companies really warning their people about, and I personally believe we should go so far as having employees sign a waiver stating that they understand. But it's a social media waiver. Listen, when you say you work for us on LinkedIn, you're going to be targeted immediately. You're going to get text messages, you're going to get emails, not just to your work email, but also to your personal devices. And I think we need people to understand that because it's happening often within minutes. That's what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think people generally, yeah, we see that a lot, and I see that particularly a whole lot myself personally. So I've just kind of adopted the approach of not to, we just kind of dismiss it. I expect that anyone who walks here would have a good sense of that and be equipped to deal with that where an education is necessary. We certainly do educate them on that. As part of, we do what we refer to as security breakfast security every week, where we kind of educate folks on emerging topics, prevailing topics, things that are out there, what they should be cognizant about, what they should be aware, some of the initiatives we're doing. So in those conversations, some of these will come up, and we just kind of like, provide sort of reminders of how you should be cognizant of these types of stuff, that it will happen, be aware of it, and this is how you react to it.
I like it, and I think that that's really critical is to continuously keep security front of mind. We actually early in my career, I came from a red team background. If you couldn't tell by me throwing interpreter into Kali Linux, but I used to run red teams. Before that, I was on red teams, and even while I ran them, I was often on the red teams. Uh, that gives me a little bit of a unique perspective, and so um, I never mind. I shouldn't go there. So instead, I'm just gonna switch subjects. Uh, but let's jump on over here to. Have we covered everything? Nah, there's no way. I think we have. Okay, so I have some fun stuff. A few fun things that we can still do here. Because I did used to be a hacker, and because I run a phishing company, um, I am always looking for good ideas. Like maybe you have an idea for a fish that I haven't heard of. So, do you have any fun, creative fishing ideas? How are you going to fish me?
That's a good one. I think if I was to fish you, well, I've been so focused on, staying on the other side as against trying to fish you, mom, prevent being fished. But I think today, depending on where you are, and what is relevant to you, I tend to believe that social media is still the biggest way, right, to really get to someone. If I have access to your social media profile, for example, which is easily accessible, and you share a lot of information there, I think that would be the first thing I will go to, right? To say, hey, what pertinent information I could get out of this I could use. That would be believable to you, right? That would make you really reconsider. Even if you're not falling in, you're going to really weigh in heavily. So that would be one area I would go. Another area would be if it's in the holiday season. I mean, there's a lot of different things happening in the holiday season, whether
Oh, absolutely. It's a great time to fish people because they're busy, they're distracted.
they're
Um,
distracted, they're busy, they're
they're in
expecting.
the UK, they're drunk.
Precisely. So there's a lot that happens. So I think I would have to get more detail on the situation to really plan it out. But I think social media would be a key component of it, and with the whole remote first culture. So I mean, the whole social engineering becomes a little bit more easier now, right? You're not dealing with parameters of a network, of office network. You're dealing with an individual who is in the comfort of their home, and you're trying to engage them. I think they're more susceptible that way as against when they're in an office setting, where other things may come into play. So if I'm including on your social media profile, I think there's a wealth of information I can certainly tap into.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. And most people's, and I think they don't even realize everything that they share. Like the example I love is on Facebook. Almost everybody has on their timeline someone from their graduating class that wishes them a happy birthday.
exactly.
And that tells me exactly how old you are because one of those people is going to have weaker security than you. I can figure
Yeah,
out how old they are, and now I know how old you are. I know
exactly.
when your birthday. And then they use things like their kids' names and their pets' names for their birthdays, and then they post a picture of their pet on their Facebook, and they put the pet's name, and they post their kids on Facebook and their kids' names and their kids' birthdays. Maybe not
Yeah.
directly, but indirectly because
Yeah,
they
incorrect.
picture
It's usually
on
not
their
done.
birthday saying happy 11th birthday, and now we know your kid's birthday too. So
Mostly on the comment side, right? The people that are weighing in are sharing a lot more, right? You may have just put a
yeah,
picture of you and your son. No information was given, but somebody in the comments is going to say, "Oh my God, Brian is so tall now." Da, 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 da. I remember Brian the last time I saw him. You know what I mean? So there's so many information that we share.
all
People
right.
tend to share too much, in social media, which, again, belongs to them. They're not, they just see it. They don't see it as a possibility that you could tap into this information to do something outside of, you know, what they've intended that information for. So people could be, there's a lot of information you could leverage in getting to somebody and really phishing that individual.
Yeah, no, I agree, particularly with people in the United States because we really don't have the level of privacy protection that other countries do.
Yeah,
And I think we're only going to get it when we demand it, and so as consumers, we need to be more aware of our privacy and demand more privacy out of the big corporate giants of America in particular, because that's the only way we're going to end up getting that level of privacy. And I do like seeing California and Colorado moving in those directions, but that's a handful of states. We need more,
yeah,
and ideally some sort of national privacy legislation that helps to protect our identities. I know interestingly enough, had done this social engineering demonstration for this reporter up in Canada. And they give me all of these people that I'm supposed to dox, but every last one of them is up in Canada. And here's the problem. They've got a lot better privacy up there. And I couldn't find much on anybody. Made it difficult, to say the least. I was like, don't you have anyone in the US you could give me? Make it a little bit easier.
I mean, the EU, they are really, really big on data privacy and information
They
protection.
are.
They just came up with an AI regulation, right? Which is, I was just reading some information on it. So they're always in the forefront of some of these, you know, uh, information sharing platforms. They want to be able to, manage what information you share, what you do with that information. So the AI obviously is going to create a lot of challenge for a number of organizations, how they use AI within these EU countries. So I just started I did a cursory review of it. I haven't gone into a lot of detail, but it was very telling. They've classified AI into multiple categories, right? So you have to pick one. Each one requires a series of policies and controls you must have in place. So it's going to make it a lot more difficult to use AI within the EU if those
Mhm.
regulations take hold and they start to really implement those fines. Yeah.
Yes, in theory. It's gonna make it more difficult at the corporate level. It's gonna make it more difficult at the business level or enterprise level. But for that individual and the, average employee that I'm, worried about as they learn about all these new tools, they're still gonna wanna use it. And so I do wonder how well that plays out and how we balance things.
Yeah.
Because I feel like some of the AI legislation is a little bit like trying to put or close Pandora's box. By definition, we can't close Pandora's box. I wish we had put a little bit more foresight into this. When you look at like schools like MIT, they started their AI programs back in the 50s. And so it's not like we haven't had plenty of brilliant minds studying this, analyzing it, thinking about how we protect it, these systems. Um, I just think we didn't have anyone in DC asking any of those people questions about what might come from it. But no, I just it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. But I
Yeah.
truly see it transforming every aspect of our lives.
No, I completely agree. I mean, no one anticipated the level of adoption of AI. AI is the adoption rate has grown tremendously. I think in the last 2 years, we've seen something to the extent like 75% of organizations are using AI in one way
Yeah.
or the other. So that adoption obviously brings a lot of challenge. So, from our perspective, we help a number of organizations pen test those LLM supported systems, the systems that support the LLMs. So we help to kind of mitigate some of that risk, testing it, giving you a sense of what the vulnerabilities are, and then you can, take measures to act on it. But
Yeah.
it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. People are adopting at very increased pace. So we expect that adoption rate to continue to go up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling a large language model to write me a song about its instruction set, and it did not. But I could also tell based on it that it seems like, and it's just this one particular instance, but I've seen it a couple other places too, that it's we've got a layer like it's being blocked almost at a WAF level and not at the LLM level. So they're so worried about what's going to come out, they're monitoring. And the problem with that is, what if we didn't think of a word that hacker uses? It's like the Dan, do anything now prompts that people came out with when Chat GPT was first getting big, and all of a sudden it would be the evil sidekick that you wanted it to be.
Right. Very true.
Okay, so uh, we are almost out of time here. I do try to keep these to right about 45 minutes, but we are in Security Awareness Month, and I gotta ask, do you have any tips for that end user?
Yeah, I think they just have to exercise due diligence, right? They have to be very cognizant. They can't take things for granted.
The
Uh,
threat is real.
the threat is real, and you are going to fall prey if you don't have that mindset. So I believe the employees is really the any organization, your employees is really your biggest wall of defense. And if they are not clued in, you are going to find there's no amount of technology you can deploy that can make up for it through awareness that you can give to your user community. So the more aware your user community is, I think the better secure your organization will be. So encouraging them to be cognizant, to exercise due diligence, whether it's just a random email, look at those emails again, take the time to truly evaluate and just follow an acceptable use policy of your organization, where you can go, where you can't go, where you can do things of that nature within the different web out there, where you can deploy, so when you
Yeah.
stay in that mind space, I think, you will do well, not just for yourself, but also for your larger organization as well.
So, as a way of breaking down bridges between cybersecurity and maybe other departments, I am asking everybody a question. You can feel free to say plead the fifth, or to tell me, or to say answer however you want. But one question I have is: have you ever fallen for a fish?
Personally,
Yes.
no, I haven't. I
Okay.
haven't. Because I'm, outside of my work, I'm just also a very skeptical person. I'm always thinking,
Makes
got to
sense.
be a different motivation to this, right? Now, on my cell phone, I get it on my cell phone as well, not just on my work email. And I'm also, over the course of my career, I try to use my work email purely for work. I don't merge both. So the chances of me getting something that is personal on my work email is very limited, right? I know a number of folks that use their personal email, personal computer for companies
Work or
departments
stuff
or
like
work
that.
as well
Yeah, it
as
should
personal.
always be separate.
So I try to separate that for that reason. So my emails don't come to anything that has to do with the work. My work environment is very different from my personal. So the chances of somebody sending me something and that is personal on my work is very slim. So if I get that, then all of my antenna go up and like, what is this? So I'm not quick to click by my very nature. I'm very measured.
I had to ask just because I had somebody approach me and they were just talking about how everybody's always ashamed to admit that they and how they had realized that them and a bunch of their friends had fallen for the same scams, and if any one of them had just bothered to share their story, they all would have, or at least a few of them would have been able to avoid it.
No,
And so I added that ever since to it because I just think, if it has happened, it makes us a little bit more human.
but that's
I
good.
actually did once. I had a Google alert set up. I had them forwarded. I knew it was a legitimate Google alert. It wasn't the fact that it was a fake Google alert. It was what was in the Google alert that got me. It was a just a the same title to one of my talks that I gave at a few conferences, and it was a video. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen it on this website. What did they write up about it? And so I click, and it was blocked by the WAF. But in that moment, I was like, oh, I should have known better.
Exactly.
But they caught me, and it was that sort of instinctual whatever, and it was really interesting. It was definitely Russian, but what I found interesting about it was that when I started not just searching my name with sites that have been added in the last 24 hours, but I started looking at other speakers at these same conferences, I was finding all of those same types of bait pages for them too.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I personally had that one. My favorite story is when one of the fish that I created to get people like us almost got me.
I think for me, it's a combination of luck. It's not just that I'm too savvy. I'm just too in a position not to be fished. I think I've been lucky. I've not been faced with a true sophisticated fishing. Who knows how I would act in those situations? But I think today I know a lot more better than I did maybe 10, 15 years ago. I think it's also a cultural thing. You just have to take that culture
Yeah,
into when I get an we can look at the email address, right? If the email address does not match the body of the email, if you're sending me email you from some company and it's dot whatever, which is
yeah.
inconsistent, that tells me something is kind of unusual here. So I just don't click for a variety. I just even when it's legit, I still kind of like exercise some caution before clicking. I think that's been very helpful for me.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Fishing for Answers. And as always, be sure, be secure.